It's just incredible how much cultural weight we put on this one idea, the idea of willpower.
Oh, totally. It's everywhere.
I mean, if you ask pretty much anyone why they struggle with bad habits, eating junk food, scrolling on their phone,
It's always the same answer.
always, it boils down to, I just lack self-discipline.
That framing is so deeply ingrained, isn't it? We operate under this belief that being healthy is basically a moral contest.
A moral contest, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're struggling with your weight or if you smoke, the story we tell ourselves is that you have some kind of character flaw, a lack of grit.
It's this almost puritanical view that says, a little bit of discipline would solve everything.
Exactly, and that's what's so interesting because the evidence just doesn't really back that up. We treat discipline like it's an inherent trait, like having blue eyes or being tall.
When it's not.
It's not. And that's where the real kind of counterintuitive truth starts to come out, when scientists actually look at the people we think are incredibly disciplined.
The super successful people, the ones who never seem to procrastinate.
Right, those people, they aren't fundamentally different. They're not, morally superior to everyone else who's struggling.
Okay, so if they're not just born with some kind of super character, then what is the secret? Why does it seem so easy for them?
The secret is structural. It's not inherent. They're successful because they are masters of, prevention. They're just better at setting up their lives and their environment so they don't require heroic willpower all the time.
Ah, so they spend less time in tempting situations to begin with.
They spend way less time. So they need to use self-restraint the least. They've basically engineered a life where they don't have to be a hero every single hour of the day.
That is a huge shift in perspective. So you're saying true discipline isn't how hard you can resist the donut on the table?
No.
It's whether you took a route home that didn't go past the bakery in the first place.
Precisely.
Ah.
Because willpower, it's a limited resource. If you're constantly drawing on it, you're going to drain it.
So the way to improve isn't just to wish you were a different person.
No, it's about using your brain to create a more disciplined environment, an environment where the good choices are just easy and the bad choices are hard, or better yet, invisible.
And that idea really comes into focus when you look at massive environmental shifts, which, that brings us to that incredible case study from the Vietnam War.
Oh, absolutely. The addiction crisis. This was not some small academic thing.
No, this was a national emergency.
It was a huge deal back in 1971. So two congressmen, they fly over to Vietnam to visit the troops, and they find something pretty shocking.
Heroin.
A lot of it. It was cheap, it was pure, and it was everywhere. They estimated that over 15% of U.S. soldiers were addicts.
15%.
And some follow-up research put that number closer to the 20%. At the time, the scientific view was that heroin addiction was, a permanent, irreversible thing.
So Washington was terrified.
Understandably. They're picturing thousands of soldiers coming home with this serious addiction.
Yeah.
They were expecting a total catastrophe.
So they set up all these programs to track everyone.
They did,
Mm.
but the catastrophe
Yeah.
just didn't happen.
It didn't.
A researcher named Lee Robbins, she followed these soldiers very carefully,
Mm.
and what she found just puzzled.
Mm.
It completely upended everything we thought we knew about addiction.
Okay, what was the number?
When the soldiers came home, only 5% became re-addicted within a year.
Only 5%.
And even more amazingly, within 3 years, only 12% relapsed.
Wait, let's be really clear on that. You're saying 9 out of 10 soldiers who had a severe heroin addiction in Vietnam, they basically eliminated it overnight just by getting on a plane and coming home?
That's what the data showed.
Yeah.
It completely changes the conversation. It's not about who is a broken person. It's about what is the environment doing to this person.
Right. If 9 out of 10 people can just stop, the problem isn't some permanent flaw in their brain chemistry.
The problem was the context.
So we have to look at that context. What was so different between Vietnam and the U.S.?
Well, Vietnam was this perfect storm of environmental cues. You have the overwhelming stress of combat, obviously.
Of course.
The drug was incredibly easy to get. It was cheap. And maybe most importantly, you were in a peer group where lots of other people were using. You were thousands of miles from home.
And then they fly back.
And all of those triggers, they vanish instantly. Different country, different friends, different stressors. They went from an environment that supported the habit to one where the cues for it were just gone.
The context changed and the habit dissolved.
Exactly.
But I do have to push back a little. Are you saying that it's only the environment, that, personal history, genetics, all the pain that leads people to use in the first place, that none of that matters?
That's a really important clarification. It absolutely matters.
Right.
But what the Vietnam study shows is that the ratio of importance is just skewed so heavily toward the environment.
So the environment is like an amplifier.
A massive amplifier. Or a silencer. If you radically change the context, you can change the odds of success from, say, 10% to 90%. The personal struggle is real, but the context is what gives it power.
Which brings us to the tragedy of how we usually handle recovery, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, contrast those Vietnam vets with the typical relapse rate today. A person struggles, they go to rehab, which is a clean environment, right? No triggers.
Like flying back to the U.S.
Exactly. But then what happens? They go back to the exact same neighborhood, the exact same friends, the exact same triggers that drove the addiction.
And the result is the complete opposite of the military study.
The complete inverse. Relapse rates for heroin users after rehab are closer to 90%. Because the moment they step back into that cue-rich environment, the old behavior is just triggered instantly. The environment is the engine of the habit.
So the real takeaway is that even when you break a habit, the ghost of it is still there.
That's the neurological reality. Once a habit is encoded in your brain, it's ready to go whenever the right cues show up. It's like a well-worn path in the snow.
Or a deep groove on a record.
That's a perfect analogy. You can stop walking down the path, but the path itself is still there, waiting.
And we see that so clearly in that story about the therapist, Patty Alwell.
Mm-hmm. She'd quit smoking for decades. And separately, had stopped riding horses for years. She'd totally broken both habits.
But then what happened?
Decades later, she gets on a horse again. And that one simple cue, the feeling of being in the saddle, the smell of the stable, it instantly brought back this overwhelming physical craving for a cigarette.
After 20 years.
For the first time in 20 years. The pathway was dormant, but the cues were still there, ready to reactivate it. You can break a habit, but you're probably not going to forget it.
That's kind of terrifying that the wiring is just dormant, and it explains the incredible speed of temptation, right? This cue-induced wanting.
Yes, and the speed is so fast that it often bypasses conscious thought entirely.
What do you mean?
We think we choose to want something, but often the desire has already been sparked before we even realize the cue is there.
How fast are we talking?
So researchers showed addicts a picture of cocaine for just 33 milliseconds.
33 milliseconds? I can't even imagine how fast that is.
It's too fast to consciously see it. They couldn't tell you what they saw, but their brain scans lit up. The reward pathways were stimulated and the craving began.
So the desire starts before we're even aware of the trigger?
Exactly. Which means by the time you consciously register, say, the notification on your phone, the battle to resist has already started. You're already at a disadvantage.
And this is why bad habits become, what was the word? Autocatalytic.
Autocatalytic. They feed themselves. They create a vicious cycle.
So walk me through how that works in, daily life.
Okay, take procrastination. You feel anxious about a deadline, so you'd scroll social media to feel a little better.
We've all been there.
Right. But the scrolling wastes time, which makes the deadline closer, which makes you more anxious. So you scroll more to cope with the new, higher level of anxiety. The coping mechanism makes the problem worse.
Or feeling sluggish. You feel bad, so you eat junk food.
Which makes you feel even more sluggish.
Yeah.
So now you don't have the energy to do anything else, so you collapse on the couch and watch TV, which just keeps you sluggish. The bad habit guarantees the conditions for the bad habit to happen again.
It's a self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
And it explains why trying to scare or shame people into changing often backfires so badly.
Yes. The public health campaigns. The idea that if we just show people enough scary pictures, they'll change.
The pictures of blackened lungs on cigarette packs.
Exactly. Or judgmental weight loss presentations. What does shaming people do? It causes stress and anxiety.
And what's the brain's go-to response for stress and anxiety?
To fall back on its most reliable coping strategy. Reaching for that cigarette. Overeating. You end up accidentally triggering the very behavior you wanted to prevent.
Because you introduced a powerful negative cue shame into their environment.
Precisamente. So, if trade to resist temptation is inefficient and often backfires, we need a better way. We need to cut the habit off at the source.
Which brings us to the practical part, the inversion of the first law of behavior change. Make it invisible.
Right. So the first law for building good habits is make it obvious. You want the cues for good habits everywhere.
So for bad habits, you just flip it.
You flip it, make it invisible. Because self-control is a great short-term tool, but it is a terrible long-term strategy. You just can't win that fight every single day for the rest of your life. It's exhausting.
And it comes back to that core idea we're all products of our environment. Trying to stick to positive habits in a negative environment is like, I don't know, swimming upstream.
It really is. Your energy is just so much better spent redesigning the environment than in constant resistance.
Okay, so let's get really practical. The challenges for most of us aren't heroin addiction. It's things like distraction or impulse spending. So let's start with the big one, procrastination at work. How do you make that cue invisible?
The phone is the biggest cue for most people. And just silencing it isn't enough. The sight of it is still a trigger.
So what do?
You physically remove it. Leave your phone in another room for, say, 90 minutes. Put it in a drawer. That one change removes hundreds of potential temptations.
Right, that little bit of friction, having to get up and walk to the other room, it breaks that instant loop.
It breaks the loop.
Okay, what about something more emotional, like feeling inadequate or envious from social media?
That's almost always an environmental problem. If you constantly feel bad about your career or your life after scrolling,
You have to change the environment.
be ruthless. Unfollow accounts that trigger jealousy. Mute people. Clean up your feed. If you don't see the curated perfection, you are so much less likely to compare yourself to it.
That's powerful. Realizing the emotional state itself is a habit being cued. What about a simple one, like watching too much TV?
The TV itself is the cue. If you just collapse on the couch every night, you have to make the device invisible.
So move it.
Move it out of the bedroom, for sure. Or even put it in a cabinet in the living room. If you don't see that big black screen staring at you, the urge to turn it on goes way down.
And what about impulse spending, like on new tech or clothes?
The craving for that stuff doesn't start in the store. It starts with the research.
So the cue is the review website.
The cue is the content that sparks the desire. So if you want to start buying new gadgets, stop reading reviews of new gadgets. Unsubscribe from the newsletters. You cut the desire off before it even forms.
And one more, what about really sticky habits like video games?
Just add a little bit of friction. Unplug the console and put it in a closet after you use it.
So it's not just sitting there ready to go.
Right. Making that cue invisible and adding the small chore of setting it up is often just enough to break that impulsive, I'll just play for 5 minutes loop.
These all sound so simple, but I guess the secret is that they work with your brain's natural laziness, not against it.
That is exactly it. The long-term secret is just optimizing your environment. Make the cues for good habits obvious and make the cues for bad habits invisible. It's the most sustainable way to use your energy.
That really brings it all together. It's so much easier to just avoid the temptation in the first place than to fight it over and over again.
Because those mental grooves, those pathways in the brain, they're basically permanent. So simple resistance is always going to be the most inefficient strategy.
We have to stop thinking about this as a moral contest and start seeing it for what it is.
An engineering problem. When you change the landscape, the behavior just follows almost effortlessly.
So if you, the listener, accept that your willpower is this limited resource, that it's constantly being drained by these invisible cues, where in your life could you apply that make it invisible principle right now, today? Where would you get the highest return on your energy?